All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and welcome to our July 11th, 2016 business meeting. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Dr. Gregory is excused. She's out of the country on business. Welcome to Mrs. Swift, running the table. And for the record, Mr. Jagodzinski requested that the disbursement report be removed from the consent agenda and put on new business. With that, we have, doesn't seem to be anybody from the public here this evening. Ms. Benetti, are you here as staff or public?
Both.
Do you have any public comment?
No, I do not.
Okay, we'll dispense with the public comment statement then. Chair's report. So board members, as you know, we conducted Dr. Fuser's evaluation last month. As part of that process, we identified areas that will be a focus of committee of the whole or workshops for the coming 12 months or so. So in addition to the standard topics that are on the meeting planner that you were sent, we know that policy work will be a major priority for this year and a half. We have the thousands, which the target is to start to look at them in August. 5,000s will be later in the fall. We have, again, the second college and career pathway work to do. Mr. Burt mentioned the next workshop will be on Tuesday, September 6th at 6 p.m. I'm sorry. So if you could put a hold on that date on your calendars. And then in the mid-fall, we'll be looking to finalize the pathway. Special education with a focus on reviewing the District Management Council audit will be held in the spring. We'll be looking at the social and emotional curriculum, an update on that in the spring. Again, we have ongoing, as appropriate data becomes available, we'll be looking at targets for the goals that we just created. Long-term, a year or so out, we'll continue discussion on pre-K work that the prior board began. And then additionally, Mr. Bird has been reviewing the enrichment and gifted program, so we'll be getting an update on that in mid-fall. Are there any liaison reports? Permanent Schools, is there a liaison report?
No, our next meeting is Wednesday.
Okay.
We haven't had a meeting since the last board business meeting.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mrs. Glennon. Good evening. The first presentation, which is a brief one, but we thought it would be interesting for you to hear about what kind of summer curriculum work and summer professional development is occurring in the district as we speak. So Mr. Bird is going to speak to that.
All right, good evening. Thank you very much. You have in your board packet an overview provided by the instructional supervisors of the curriculum work that would be taking place this summer, as well as the professional learning on that last page. And just to give you the sort of the 10,000-foot picture, really curriculum work is divided into many different aspects. And as I said in my board agenda, that the primary purpose of the curriculum work really is to ensure both horizontal and vertical alignment. That's a fancy way of making sure that what we do in the previous grade and the next grade after that is aligned to what we do in any particular grade, as well as what we do in one building or one classroom is aligned to what's happening into the other classroom in a particular grade or subject. So the other pieces, obviously, of curriculum writing, we want to make sure that we provide clear overview of the learning outcomes. In other words, what should students know and be able to do by the end of the school year or the end of the course. But we also want to make sure that we're aligning our resources, our instructional materials, as well as any assessments are all clearly aligned to those learning objectives. And it sounds easy enough, but it really is difficult. I sat in with the middle school language arts folks for a couple hours, and they were struggling with creating really good essential questions. A high-level essential question that could drive instruction for the entire year. In other words, how do you ask a kid-friendly question that you can't easily answer, and that is going to help them think about the topics that you're providing them through your language arts class? And that's, again, seems easy. You know, kids seem to come up with these questions all the time, like, can you hear music? I mean, can you see music? Can you hear art? Those are really good questions. So they come up with a kindergartner comes up with that all the time. But, for as adults, we tend to think almost in, right and wrong questions. So it's really part of the process. So if you have any specific questions, as I said, we started right after the end of school on June 10th, and we started the following Monday on June 13th. We had a kickoff session. We want to make sure that our I work with instructional supervisors to ensure that they understand the expectations for good curriculum writing, and that they translate that into the teams that they're working with to make sure that the entire district is aligned to what is a good curriculum document, as well as all that supporting information I just talked about. One of the pieces I do want to draw your attention to is on that second page, is that we're working, on that social and emotional curriculum. Met for 2 days with a district-wide committee on how do we take a look at what we currently have. Ms. Annalise Spaziano has been working on that since she entered that role in late winter, and has been working with the team, but this was really a good opportunity to sit down for a few hours and get into where we currently are and where do we need to be, and what are the short-term gains and what are the long-term gains we need to work on. So if you have any questions on the curriculum, I can move into professional development. If you don't have any questions, yes.
I have a question. Under social studies, there's an item about midterms for 9th and 10th grade. So is that something different that's not offered now?
I'm not sure of the question.
Are these the midterm exams that they don't typically take now, that they would be taking going forward?
So in terms of assessment work, what we're moving towards, and the focus for the high school in particular, is coming up with exams that provide students with an opportunity really to demonstrate their knowledge.
Okay.
Looking back to even when I was teaching history classes, some of my exams were 50 multiple choice, fill in the blank, short answers, and an essay. Does that really get into what students know and be able to do? So the directive from me to the instructional supervisors, to the high school principals, to the department chairs really is to take a hard look at our midterm and final exams in relation to our new board goals. So are students able to demonstrate that high-level thinking that we're requiring in our board goals? Are we requiring it within our classes? So over the next year or two, we're going to be taking a hard look at both our midterms and final exams to ensure that they're aligned to those expectations at the district level.
But correct me if I'm wrong, the high school students today are not taking midterms, right?
They are taking midterms, yes.
They are? Okay.
They did this year, yes.
They did?
I didn't think they did.
I don't think they did.
There was an option to take them this year, yes.
Okay. But I'm speaking from personal experience, my
Yep.
freshmen did not.
So they will all be taking them next year.
Okay.
There was a good discussion that took place with all the department chairs from both high schools and the administration on the validity of using that instructional time. It is 4 days out of the classroom, whether or not the assessments align to the needs of the district. And out of that conversation came the idea that yes, we should be giving common midterms, but they have to be high quality.
Okay.
So there was some, what I would say coming into the district, there was some confusion on whether or not there should be midterms, and we've answered that question.
Okay, and the answer is there should be.
There will be
okay.
midterms with the midterm period,
Okay.
and that we're moving towards high quality midterms.
Okay. Okay.
And this takes 4 days?
If you have 8 periods, yes.
They're
not
approximately
for full
close
days.
to 2 hour
2 hours.
exams. So if you have half days, so then you're talking 4 hours a day.
Right.
With a break in between. And the teachers need time to then correct those exams because the grades then would be submitted like within 24 hours after or the weekend after the exams are given.
And having worked in a district where students took 3 exams, I can tell you by the 3rd exam, they were not very effective.
But that's only part of the day. They have regular classes after that? They take the midterms? Or do we dedicate 4 full days to midterm exams?
We've dedicated, and that's been for years and years, have been dedicated. We didn't dedicate the days this year, and that's part of what prompted the conversation that Mr. Burt was talking about.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty standard, and again, because of the length of the exams, and what happens is that the exams end and usually within like about 48 hours, the grades have to be turned in. Well, there's no time for teachers to correct those exams.
Right.
If they're then expected to teach for the rest of the day.
I'm just, reflecting the concern that parents have about the amount of time that's taken out of the classes for testing. And, 4 days is an enormous chunk of time for the midterms.
I can't speak for the department heads, you could speak to that. What I can say is that there has always been a feeling that the exams are something that is good preparation for students, whether they go on to college or they go into a training program of, really being able to, a good exam, you really, you're reflecting on what's mastery of a set of information, and how to exhibit that.
Right.
That's where I think the value of it is. You heard from the department heads. I'm sure they expressed other reasons as well.
The big primary driver was really to create a good, solid assessment and that you can do in 2 hours. It's very difficult to do a high-quality assessment in a very short time, a regular class period. That these, and again, it's accumulation of their entire knowledge for a semester. The other piece to it, too, is that we have a number of semesterized courses, and that if we didn't give the midterm, that they wouldn't have that opportunity like the second semester classes do for final exams.
So just to clarify, the midterms are coming back in all subjects? In all?
Correct.
Okay. I can just speak from my own personal experience as a parent, having a freshman who didn't take midterms and only took final exams. In some subjects, the final exams were really tough for the kids to adjust to. It was kind of a shock for them to take the final exam, and I tend to think that having had a midterm halfway through the year, they may have done better on the final exam.
That was also part of the argument that, the final exam in June, does that count for the entire coursework from September? That this was also a way to chunk out some of that knowledge that you only, in essence, are responsible for the first part. However, my direction is to ensure that these exams really are conceptual. They do have to have the skill-based and the content knowledge to support that, but really should be applying your knowledge into a high-quality exam to prove that you know and understand the subject, rather than, I'll speak to my exam, 50 multiple choice questions on very specific, content. What's the date of the Declaration of Independence? There's some of that, but really should be, what is the significance of the Declaration of Independence?
Other questions?
A quick question. What is the sexual assault curriculum? As I know it goes all the way up through 9th grade with the alignment and everything. What does that cover?
I don't have very specifics on that, but I know that this is a mandate from the state now.
Well, I just wasn't sure, were the parents involved in that, like authors? I wasn't sure how in-depth it got, or
This is
what
part
did it
of,
cover?
this was legislated, I should say, that we are now, every school district in the state is mandated to teach children. So it's not just middle school and high school.
Oh, yeah, no, I know, that's why I was asking, because it was in each one going with
Correct.
it.
And it's the idea of, part of it is around, it's not just an issue of stranger danger, it's literally how to protect yourself, how to ensure that if something does happen, that you report it, and more. But it's a mandate from the state.
I just wasn't sure, because you teach a certain, but it goes all the way up through to 9th, and that's why I was just like, wow, it's a pretty big subject if you're covering them each school, period you go up.
Right, and it would be obviously grade level appropriate, age appropriate.
But it's just a small piece of the health curriculum,
It's not a
right?
course.
It's not like it's a whole
Correct.
course.
It's a very small
Okay,
part
I
of
wasn't
the-
sure, because it said curriculum, like
Correct.
Well, there
how
would be,
big
yeah,
was
there
it?
would be probably a unit or some lessons that would be in it, but they have to be carefully developed, particularly in light of the.
Well, that's why I was
subject.
asking on that, because it just,
Yeah. I mean, when these get mandated, you sort of want to say to the state, and so do you have a curriculum for us?
Well, that's why I was asking. I know
They
a lot of
usually
times they
don't,
mandate stuff. That's why I asked what's in it, because they mandate stuff and then they just said, okay, now you figure it out.
That's
Well,
what they do.
the work is coming up, as you can see. This is part of the health curriculum. But again, we're trying to determine, without much guidance from the state, of how do we do this in first grade, for instance, so.
Okay.
On the curriculum work, you're bringing in the teachers and they're being compensated for this time.
Correct.
Do you have any problem attracting teachers, getting teachers to come in?
No.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that question. We do try to ensure as best as possible, if it's a elementary curriculum, for instance, that we bring in teachers from every building.
Right.
As best as possible. Like I said, I was here for the language arts curriculum, and we had a teacher from each building in each grade, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So at least one, so that was good.
Is there any competition? People wanting to get it and
Not that I'm aware of, no.
seniority issues or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So moving on to professional learning, you can see there's a variety of pieces here. Some of it's district initiatives like PLC training. Those are professional learning communities that have been ongoing. We continuously need folks to help run those meetings during the school year, ranging from that to our Project Adventure certification for our PE teachers, which is a neat piece of the curriculum for our PE, down to restorative discipline, etc. We have some of the things, I'm not sure I see them on here, but we have the new career pathways. We are sending folks to training for computer science. That is grant, so perhaps that's not in this because that is grant driven. We do have local professional development. We're instituting writers workshop. We're trying to finalize that piece, which was put into place in our elementary schools. We sent, we have folks getting trained in NWA, again, which is our local assessment that we're using. PMT training, I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, Carol, Ms. Swift.
So, that again is another mandate where we have to make all people aware of seclusion and restraint laws. And what we've been working on is educating all of our staff on the psychological side of PMT, and then training a select team within each building to be trained in the physical management techniques for children who may need that type of intervention.
And overall, what we're trying to do is we're not doing new initiatives. As we said in the budget, what we're trying to do is strengthen and sustain. For example, we're doing more work with our 4th and 5th grade teachers as a result of the departmentalization from last year. So we're bringing them in to help strengthen their practice around the chains and subjects, et cetera. So a lot of it really is trying to fine-tune the things that we're currently doing. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is, again, just to bring you up to date on the programs that are being offered in the summertime. So I've asked Carol Swift if she would speak to the special ed programs, of which there are many that are being taking place in the summertime, and then also have Mr. Bird speak to the programs in summer school. And you should have a copy of the PowerPoint that's up there.
So good evening, everybody. I wanted to talk to you tonight about what we refer to as extended school year services for students with, who are identified as special education students and have an IEP. I wanted to talk to you about how we identify students who need extended school year services, and then give you an overview of the different programs that we offer. So one of the things that we take a look at the students' annual meeting is the nature of their disability, and then take a very careful look at whether or not they've demonstrated any type of regression over a no instructional time period. So perhaps over winter break or April break, if we see a real regression in their skill abilities, and then if we also note that they are having difficulty regaining those skills and it's taken an inordinate amount of time, then we want to be sure that we offer them an extended school year service plan so that that doesn't happen across that elongated break from instruction. So that's what we take a look at when we are determining who should be receiving extended school year services. Some of the programs that we offer, you'll see here for our elementary students. All of these are taking place at either Orange Avenue School or at Camp Happiness, which is taking place at Foreign this year. So we have at Orange Ave, we have a pre-K program, we have a pre-K autism program, we have an autism program for students K-5, and then also social skills programs for students who struggle socially. We also offer walk-in services, so that might be 3 half hours a week of reading instruction or math instruction. We also offer related services with speech and language or occupational therapy and physical therapy. At Camp Happiness, which is a Milford Rec Department program, we also build in tutoring time and related services right within the camp. So while the children are there all day, they're pulled for their tutoring, and that works out well. Lots of families opt for that. We probably, larger than the numbers that are presented here, we have offered services to some folks who say no thanks, and they either say, their child will be fine, or they opt to do different things on their own. Sometimes they work with the child. So the numbers you see there doesn't mean that that's all we offer the services to, but those are the people who have accepted it at the elementary level.
Any feel for what percentage of the parents actually turn it down?
I don't know that off the top of my head. It's a small number. Most say yes. Sometimes it's a vacation clash or something like that, but most of the tutoring services are offered for 4 weeks in the summer. Anything related to autism is usually 5 weeks during the summer. We can move to the middle school. So at East Shore, we have a social skills program that is made up of 28 children. Some of them are students with an IEP, some of them are serving as mentors. We have an autism program. We also offer walk-in services there with the tutoring and the related services. At high school, at the high school level, we have a series of different programs that you can see up there. This is at East Shore Middle School. You can see too in the parentheses that this doesn't just take place at East Shore Middle School. Some of the activities that the children engage in occur in the classroom or and in the community, or job sites in the community. The 5 program, which is 5th year vocational experience for kids when they're finished with their 4 years of high school, takes place at Parsons and within the community. We also offer walk-in services. As you can see, they are very similar to what we offer in the other levels, although this offers counseling as well.
Any questions
Any
on that?
questions?
Okay, thank you. So moving into the regular ed programs, we start at the elementary level. We provide what's called the Summer Academy, and this is an opportunity for students to gain some strength in areas of weakness, specifically in math and language arts instruction. Based on teacher recommendation, students have the option of selecting into this. This is not a mandatory course requirement. In reality, what we do is we offer up to teachers reach out to parents saying that your student could use some additional help in 1 or 2 areas in a specific skill set. And this is just an opportunity for students to come in, gain a little strength, and not lose any ground over the summer. This is offered to our K through 4 students, in other words, our rising 1st through 5th grade students. It's a Monday through Friday program. It's actually starting tomorrow, and as you can see, it's for 3.5 hours. Currently, we have 117 students enrolled in a variety of locations. Sorry, one location, JFK. At the middle school level, we have what's called this is more of an enrichment piece. This is a summer transition academy for math. This is for students, this is an option again for students that are transitioning into those advanced math classes. It again helped them with specific skills, a little bonus work here prior to the start of the school year. It's June 27th through July 14th. It's only 3 hours in the morning, and we had 67 students enrolled from all 3 schools. in this program. Again, this is a great opportunity. This is not mandatory. This is really for students who are challenging themselves in a more difficult course to get some additional help in the summer to get them prepared for that first day of school. In a more traditional sense, at our high school level, we have that more traditional summer school model. This is for credit recovery, either for a full year course or a half credit. There's a variety of reasons how students lose credit, and that they're given this opportunity. Again, we don't mandate this, but if they want credit for that course to move on to the next level or to graduate on time, for instance, this is an opportunity. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. This is for high school students, not for those rising students. It is similar. It's 2 sessions offered. It is offered Monday through Thursday. There's 2 time frames involved here. You can take two classes per day, and this is tuition based and is on pass-fail basis. So you don't get a grade out of this. Either you successfully complete the course, you don't. There are attendance rules, there are behavior rules, etc. Other piece to this is a credit enhancement. If you were in the D range and you'd like to move your grade up into the max you can get is a 70 or a C minus, but it gets you out of that D range. So you can take a course to try to get a better grade in a specific subject. Currently we have 55 students enrolled in a variety of sessions and a variety of courses. Yes, sir.
How much is tuition?
That is a good question. I have the brochure with me.
300.
Is it 300 per course? Thank you.
And is there a sliding scale for people who are financially needy?
We can check on that, but I believe so, because that's really a philosophy of the district.
Right.
We can check on that.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
In this credit recovery, how many cuts are they allowed? How many absences are they in this brief period?
It's a maximum of 3.
3 maximum. So in other words, if they're intending to skip school during the regular school year and they're coming back, they know right off they're only allowed 3 cuts, and that's it.
Correct. As you can see, though, it's an intensive program. It's a 3-hour program. You miss 1 day. The chances of you passing that course, if you lose 2 days and then 3 days, it's very unlikely that you're gonna actually get through this recovery piece as well.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Also available again on the Richmond side of things, we have our AP Summer Academy, which is a fantastic opportunity for students that are transitioning to those advanced classes. As you know, it's something that we emphasize here in Milford, that we really are encouraging students to challenge themselves with AP courses. It is taught by our AP teachers. It is relatively brief, but it gives students a starting point. As you can see, it's offered in June. So students that are starting this summer, a lot of times with AP courses, I don't know if you're aware of this, there is summer work that's necessary. Having taught AP US History, there was a tremendous amount of work that had to be done because we had to cover all of US History prior to the May exam date. So a lot of times we would give assignments in the summer to help students get a kickoff into some of the early history. I know that a lot of the courses have those expectations. So this is an introduction from the actual teachers in many cases that they may have in the fall, but it also gives them, these are some of the things, study skills that may help them understand how to take the AP courses, the expectations, and in some cases very specific skills that are necessary for course A chemistry. These are some of the expectations that may happen in this class. As you can see, we have 118 students enrolled in a total of 255 classes. What that means is that they're taking 2 or 3 AP exams in some cases, and they're getting that experience over these 2 different sessions. Again, a great kickoff that is beneficial to our students, a fantastic offering there. Finally, in the enrichment arena, we offer enrichment courses for all students, and this is K through 12. It's based on interest. We have the full catalog online if you are interested, and we can send that to you. But it ranges from iMovie production, which is on your iPad, for instance, 3D printing, basic cooking, etc., keyboarding, a number of different courses open to all students, any interest. These are 1 to 2 week courses depending upon the level of intensity. And they're offered Monday through Thursday. Those are the times available. Not all the courses run at full time. Some may run for an hour, some may run longer. And right now, we have 35 students enrolled in a variety of courses. So again, yet another great summer enrichment opportunity here in Milford.
Was the high school credit recovery, is that the only one of all of these that are tuition-based?
I'm sorry, yes, the summer enrichment is tuition-based. There's fees for that.
In the summer enrichment, how many courses were there roughly? There was quite a few, right?
I want to say there are close to 20 courses offered.
Okay,
Not all of them run on a regular basis.
okay. And 35 students enrolled, does that seem a little low?
I would say, for me, I would like to see that expanded. I'm not sure what the history is in the district for that.
Okay.
Consistent. It's been about that number for a while.
Okay.
And transportation is done by the parents for all the students that we don't provide, except for special education, any transportation for the summer courses?
Correct.
No, we actually do for the summer, for the elementary
The language arts
JFK.
university.
Right,
Okay.
we do. But it's not pickup in neighborhoods. The students have to get to a school, and then they're transported to JFK, where this work takes place.
Oh, okay, so that's kind of a limited
Yes.
transportation
It is.
support.
So which program is that?
That's the.
Summer Academy, elementary.
Oh, the Summer Academy in
Yeah,
JFK?
that's for the literacy and numeracy pieces.
Okay.
And those are students that are identified.
Oh,
and-
okay.
And invited into the program.
If I might, the other question I had was, I had heard from some constituents that this year's early conclusion was somewhat disruptive of their summer plans. Do you find from a scheduling standpoint any issues regarding our schedule, whether we finish early or late, whether this impacts your summer programs? Because, I mean, number of snow days, we could push things toward the end of June, depends, right? So I don't think so, but I'm just asking if you see any scheduling issues with the way in which we are currently expected to end our year.
As being a part of this work for the scheduling, typically we just base it on previous school years to try to ensure there's the consistency. Also, we have to work around some of the projects that are occurring in the district. That is a big piece of it, whether or not we can use a specific building.
Construction work and that kind of.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Also, obviously, air conditioning is a concern, so we try to find locations that provide at least some air conditioning, or we can create some air-conditioned environments. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it. Typically, though, I would say that these dates are relatively close to last year's dates.
So you don't see or expect any problems with, if we finish a day or two earlier or later, it's fine from our scheduling standpoint.
What I would say is that when the school year closes later, so for example, the year we had the 13 days.
Yep.
That was a scramble to get the summer school up and running, because the in-between time was so short. You know, even, for example, for credit recovery, you're waiting for those grades, kids then to be notified, et cetera. So that's more of a challenge than getting out early.
Right.
And what I would say is, I know that, I heard it myself from parents, because they were worried about, well, what do we do before the camps begin? You know, but I would say also, I have heard from countless teachers who have been here for 30-plus years who have said never has the school year ended as early as it did this year. I mean, I think this was such an anomaly.
Just like we had the really bad year with 13 snow days, this year we had two. I'm not sure, I mean, very
Plus the
few.
election day, or the
Right.
primary day, that's correct, right.
Okay, I just.
So order your snow now for next year. Yes, Mr. Jagosinski?
Yeah, one final question. the cost of the summer enrichment program, it seems like with only 35 students spread out among a multitude of courses, there must be relatively small numbers of students in each course. Does it, I'm interested in whether the tuition cost covers the cost of the program.
I think,
We'll get you specific details on that.
Yeah.
I think from what I've heard from parents on that program is sometimes the flyer comes out a little later when people have already made their plans.
Right.
And the tuition costs are relatively high compared to some of the other programs that are available already in the city. So I think a lot of people are already committed. And committed to something that was less expensive.
We have some work to do, I think, in order to recruit teachers in particular to develop programs and courses that they may offer that would be of interest to kids and get that out to parents as quickly, if not before, when the piece on the credit recovery goes out. Credit recovery is standard, you know, every year, so.
If I might, following up on that, for your teachers, what's the basis for compensating for the teachers for those summer classes that they teach? Is it a stipend, is it per diem?
It's a stipend, it's all laid out in the contract, so it's based on courses, number of courses, number of years, et cetera.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Speaking of the calendar, we're coming back to you very simply because when we brought this to you in February, I believe it was, we did not have testing dates for this current year. And we learned within the last couple of weeks that the PSAT exam, which all of our sophomores take, and juniors, I believe. All of our correct. Is October 19th. And meanwhile, the new SAT, second year of it being administered, is April 5th. And it just so happens both of those days were days that we had designated as early release days. So we wish to move those early release days. And we've suggested what we would move them to, October 19th, and then April, and actually move it back, the April 5th one, to March 29th, so that we would still be able to have both days. Anybody have any questions?
Just a related question. Shouldn't the board be voting on the half-day on the December 23rd? That decision, I know that decision was made as part of a grievance.
It certainly, I mean, that's your call. I mean, I don't know how to weigh in on that.
I don't know that we don't normally necessarily approve the half-days. I think you're just more looking for our blessing. I mean, we can add that to the motion if you're more comfortable, so.
I think, Madam Chair?
Yes.
The bottom of the calendar says approved by the Milford Board of Education. So in a sense, we're approving the whole calendar as is, right? That's how I would see it.
Okay.
Whatever's on the paper,
Yeah,
that's what we approve.
You add that
That's
to
fine.
the motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, but we do have to approve the calendar, so, the original calendar, so we're approving a revision. So I would say the motion would be that the Milford Board of Education approves the revision to the 2016-17 calendar as follows. And then, we've added December 23rd as a half a day, early dismissal day. And then changing the, in your packet, what it says at the end. Flip over to the,
To Dr. Feaser's.
one page forward.
Actually, it'd be 2 pages forward.
And then here, changing, then this at the end, I think it's and changing. Oh, okay, here. Approve the revision to 2016-17 calendar, adding December 23rd early dismissal. And changing, and that's at the end. Read this at the end. Okay. All right.
Okay, we're good?
Motion? Yes.
Okay, make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves the revision on the 2016-17 calendar, adding December 23rd early dismissal, and changing the October 19th, 2016 early dismissal date to October 26th, 2016, and the April 5th, 2017 early dismissal date to March 29th, 2017.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
The next,
Could I just make a suggestion that if we post a notice on the website that there's a revised calendar in some fashion, so parents know that there's been a revision made?
I was thinking that we ought to send at least a written message.
Okay, yeah, just so that
to
parents are aware
so
that it's a
they then would
revision.
go on and make sure that they saw the changes. We can indicate what they are, but at least then they would.
Do you have that on the website that they can print that page up?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
yeah.
The next item is the end-of-year financials, and I'm going to turn over to Mr. Rosatelli.
Thank you, Dr. Fieser, Mrs. Glenn, and members of the board. You have in your board package the final report, final quarterly report, but obviously it's the for the entire fiscal year. And then along with that, going back to the report, you'll see that there are several accounts that are either in surplus or deficit, and then correspondingly, we would ask you to make the board transfers that are listed in the second item that's on your agenda. I've listed in your package the transfers, where the monies would come from, what accounts are in surplus, and which ones we would ask you to transfer to. There's an explanation for each one, so I don't think that I'll go through each one now, but if you have any specific questions, I'm certainly here to answer any questions that you have. And then we would request that you transfer them to those items listed on the second page of the transfer. And again, we've given you a brief description of that, but we can elaborate if you want to. And with that, if you make those transfers, then the board will end the year with a balanced budget, which I think is all of our goal.
Yes, Mr. Jagosinski?
I find this whole process really bizarre, because I'm used to a situation where you establish a budget at the beginning of the year, and you may have individual categories, some go over, some go under. As long as the bottom line is met, you're fine. Are we mandated to do this way? I mean, have you ever heard this outside of government?
In private industry, from my years of experience in private industry, we would make these internal transfers. We didn't have a governing board that needed to approve them. Obviously, it's much different in the public sector. When I was across the street in my other role, we did the exact same thing. We would come to the Board of Aldermen after the end of the fiscal year, and we used to call it the budget, the cleanup session, the budget book cleanup session, or closing of the book session, where we'd make the transfers that would close out the fiscal year and put everything in balance. So that's there are, as we speak, there are surpluses in those accounts where you see the surpluses, and we wish to transfer them to those items that are either in deficit, or those items that we've asked through our memos that we transfer them to do other work that otherwise would not have gotten done.
But the only reason a lot of these are zero is because we've done transfers in previous quarters.
We've only done, the board did a board transfer in June. That was the only other one. The others were all internal transfers that we're allowed to do within categories. Any that go from category to category have to be approved by the board, and those were done at the June meeting and then followed up here at the July meeting.
Can we get information that says, this is the original budget, this is where we ended up, this is whether we're over or under, and what the percentage is?
Isn't that what the quarterly, what the report reflects?
Actually, no. Most of these numbers, well, some of these numbers have been changed.
You will receive that when the final budget book is printed, because you'll be able to see what was actually spent versus what was budgeted. And then going forward, you'll see what has been budgeted for the 16-17 school year. So you will get that.
And that's in the fall, later in the year? That's-
Right,
it's, you know,
usually by around September 1st.
The actual, as it stands right now, our budget that we approved is
Right.
not, it's not etched in stone final yet. I mean, and they have to print up a formal budget book. Right now, we only have a proposed, the budget book we have now is still our proposed budget. So once all of the this end of year is all cleaned up, the formal budget book for 16-17 is printed up, and that will show all of the end-of-year figures for this current year. So
But-
you'll have that in that budget book.
Is it going to show every category is in budget, in
It's the
balance?
whole book. It's the entire budget book.
The budget book, you will, in the budget book, we have one column for actuals.
Okay.
For one column for budgeted, one column for actuals.
For this past school year.
Correct.
Just-
Correct.
And is that
15-16 school year.
budgeted column what we approved in June?
Yes.
June or?
No, not
Last
June,
year.
not
June, no.
Last
In
year.
May.
You mean
But-
last year.
Right, in May.
Correct.
And it's not adjusted, not funds transferred from one category to another.
It's what we budgeted last year. It shows what we budgeted for 2015-16.
Right.
What was actually spent, the adjusted amount for 2015-16. I don't remember what the columns are.
I'm not sure if we've got adjusted or if we've got
Actual.
Actual
The
budget.
actual. So that would reflect what was actually spent. So anything that was, if we transferred money out of there, it would be reflected in that dollar figure, the actual. That's for 2015-16. And then there's, the last column is the 2016-17 budget that we passed. So it's the actual full budget book. I think if you could wait until you see that, I think it will
Well,
answer your
the-
question.
The other thing is, these quarterly reports just aren't very meaningful.
Well, it shows us what accounts, where we stand within the accounts, and whether we're, expected to go over budget, under budget.
This is an archery contest where you shoot the arrow and then you go put the bullseye around it. That's essentially what we're doing here.
Well, but, there's an explanation for that. When the budget is put together, we're actually projecting amounts for a budget that in some cases won't be spent until 18 months later. We're putting the budget together in October and November of one year. It won't be spent until, in some cases, the following June of the
2 years later.
2 years later, or 18 months later. So in some respects, you're right. Public budgeting is not an exact science. We've said that many times before. When we're putting together the budget, it's our best projection based upon the best information we have at that time.
But that's true of any budgeting.
Correct.
And it's also true that any budget, you're doing that, months in advance of when it's going to go into effect. None of that is unique. But
Right.
the information that we really need, and we should have it on an ongoing basis, so we have a better feel when we go into the budget season what we're dealing with. If we're budgeting $50 million a year for salaries, and we're actually only spending $45 million, and we do that year after year after year, if we knew that, then we would know we need to hone in on that salary number. But doing it this way, I mean, we're not getting any feel for how good a budgeting process we actually did.
Well, I can assure you, we do a very good budget process. But beyond that, beyond that.
And I'm sure, as a board, we've done an excellent job. However.
You will see in the adopted budget book, it lists the 15-16 adopted budget, and then it will list the actual expenditures for 15-16.
And we're getting that in September.
Correct.
Okay. I'd still like to see that type of information on a quarterly basis. The other thing is, in a report like this, I would sure like to see subtotals by salary, by benefits, rather than just, I take it all of the 1,000s are salary?
I'm not sure. On the quarterly report, you can see, the quarterly report lists every account. So the 1,000s, there's certified administrators, there's teachers, there's summer school salaries, substitutes, coaches and advisors. You can see every category that's listed there. Those are all the 1,000 salaries accounts.
Right. But I'd like to see a subtotal of what we're spending on salaries, what we're spending on benefits, what we're spending on transportation, rather than, 200 different line items.
Well, that's in the detail, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it would be easy enough to do a subtotal for each category. We could do that.
Isn't that in the budget book itself?
It is in the budget book. I think Mr. Jagodzinski's asking for
Doing
it
it on one
on the
page.
quarterly report.
Yeah, well, no, it could be here and the subtotals. But again, I'm going back to, we need to be constantly educating ourselves on the budget process. And if we had better information every quarter, we enter the budget process better informed.
The board has never asked for, outside of asking questions, the board has never asked for a different format for the quarterly report. This has been the format that the board has requested for many, many years, predating me. And so we come to the board on a quarterly basis with the same report that the board has been getting for years and years and years. If there's a different format, and the board, there's different formats for different kinds of budget reporting, we can do a different format, but we've never been requested to do so.
Well, this is a new board, even better than previous board.
I don't know, I look at this gives me what I need. It tells me I can look at this and see for every single line where we're at in the course of the year as we get the quarterly reports. And I don't know how much more specific that can be than seeing line by line where we stand, because that's what this report does. It tells you exactly what's been expended at that point in time.
I have a question. Adjusted budget, is that different than what is budgeted?
Yes, that would be what was transferred throughout the year. Yes.
And many of those transfers have been made
Internally.
internally, not
Correct.
at our level.
So, can I?
Oh.
It would, if we just, if a column was added that said, approved budget line, and that was a column before the adjusted budget line, would that?
Yeah, and you could see the difference between that and, yeah.
Is that feasible? Mr. Ricitelli?
I think so. We'll definitely look into it.
But to go back to your original question, the board is required to approve transfers that go outside of the line item. So, they can make adjustments within a line, within an account, but the board has to approve anything that goes outside of the transfer out of the account.
For example, from 1,000 to 2,000.
Correct.
Correct.
But these have already taken place, so we have no alternative but to approve it.
No, these
Well,
haven't taken place yet. What we're-
As I said, currently, there are surpluses in those accounts. There are also some accounts that are in deficit. So if you don't make certain transfers, there's going to be accounts that are in deficit. And there will be some that will remain in, I mean, the real discretionary ones on your, on the board transfer request is buildings projects and the grounds projects. The maintenance supplies, custodial supplies, we both are in deficit on those two accounts, and we don't have any other money within the 4,000s accounts to cover it. So that's why we're coming to the board and saying there's surpluses in these other areas, can we transfer into the 4,000s to cover the maintenance supplies and the custodial supplies? As opposed to the buildings and grounds projects where those are the items that, these are over and above what the original budget allowed for. We send the board a memo in May stating that if there's monies left over at the end of the year, these are the projects that could be spent or could be undertaken. And as we've explained to the board many times before, these are not, none of the projects that are on that list are frills or anything that, is new. It's things that have their needs of the district that for whatever reason, they fall out of the budget process each year. There's just not enough money to complete them. But it doesn't mean that every single one of them is not completely necessary and will have to be done at some point in the future anyway.
No, I have a question on that.
Yes, Mr. Hagedorn?
Thank you. Do we get a list, if we're transferring 170,000, do we get a list of what you did and where that money went?
You will see a list so long your eyes will glaze over.
Well, I just want to know, if we're transferring the money to this hit list, so to
Yes.
speak, I want to make sure the hit list is getting done and that we're just not writing PO numbers and then allowing the money to carry forward.
No, generally it's October, I believe we come with the summer projects report, and you'll see an itemized list of every single project that was undertaken, and the dollars that, where the dollars came from.
Okay.
Yep.
And you had given us a preliminary list in May, though.
The list in May is where we are saying that if there's money left over, these are the projects that we would spend it on.
Right.
These are our priorities.
So this
for year.
$70,000, we were given a list in May that
Yes.
included those.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I want to make sure
That
they
they'll
got
get done,
done,
yep.
that we actually use the money for that.
And I make it really clear in that memo that there's many more dollars on that memo than we could ever do with end-of-year money.
Oh, yeah, no, I just want to, just, so
not
not
all
check
of them are
off that
done.
list that we are using the money for it.
Yes.
And we,
Every
we are
single,
doing it.
every single one there's nothing that will be undertaken that was not on that list, that was not already budgeted for.
Okay.
Any other questions on this transfer request? Mrs. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to offer a comment to what Mr. Jakuzinski was saying earlier, I think for me it would be helpful if there were a way to include subtotals on this report, because the way you're transferring the money within the same accounts of the same type, it would be helpful to see some subtotals, however you can do them within the program that you have. So if it's all the 1,000s, all the 2,000s, or something along the lines of how we get them at budget time, because I know when we get them in our budget books, there's some subtotals in there.
Sure.
I think that'd be helpful.
Any other questions? Okay, motion, Ms. Tobias?
I make a motion that the Board of Education approves administration's recommended 2015-2016 final budget transfers.
For a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
The next item on the agenda is the Human Resources Report. Mrs. Kapasna is actually out of town, so I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that anyone may have on this report. As you can see, trying to find it here. We have obviously, any of the positions that are open that we're still looking for. We also have the personnel, the recommendations, and then the retirements, resignations, terminations, and then the one stipend appointment here.
Any questions on this? Okay, no questions? All right. Is that it, Dr. Fieser? That's it, right?
That's it, yes.
Okay, so move on to the consent agenda for just the minutes. Motion, Mr. Bias?
Yep, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items on the meeting from June 13th, 2016 was our business meeting, and June 27th, 2016, special meeting minutes.
Second.
Second by Ms. Federico, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So then we move on to new business. Motion to approve the disbursement report, Ms. Tobias.
Okay, make a motion to approve the disbursement report.
Oh, second.
Okay, discussion?
Um,
Mr. Jagosinski?
Okay. This money's already been spent, right?
Correct.
What happens if we don't approve it?
That's a good question, to be perfectly honest with you. I went back to policy governance and the board's policies and was not able to find any reference to the disbursements report. We went back about 8 years, and the board's been doing, we've gone back about 8 years. We didn't get past, earlier than that. But the board's been doing it for a long time. So my only guess, and it is a guess, is that at some point, some board asked to see what was dispersed on a monthly basis, and they, I guess, randomly picked $1,500 because we couldn't find a reference to $1,500 or the disbursements report anywhere. So your point is one that's well taken. You're given a report of what has already been dispersed.
So if I could offer another little anecdotal piece, but Ms. Kapazin would confirm this, but she's not here tonight. Going back many, many years, a dozen years or so, the Human Resources report was part of the consent, was voted on, and somebody raised that exact point. These people have already been hired, so what happens if we don't approve the report? And at that time, they removed it from an action item, and they just made it an informational item. So if there's no statutory reason why we have to actually vote to approve it, we certainly could do the same. I do the same thing with this disbursement report. I kind of like seeing, the dollars, I think it's a good report. I wouldn't say we should do away with the report, but we certainly can move it up into, as part of the superintendent's report and just make it an informational report with no action, because I see your point, it seems redundant that we're approving it, actually approving it.
We can't actually take the checks back.
Correct, yes. Mr. Whiskey,
The only question along with that would be the amount that draws your attention. $1,500 seems like a unusual number to me. At the same time, you want it to be something significant, in terms of looking at what you're dispersing. And I don't want to see every $8.88 check that's written. It would go on for too many pages.
Mrs. Griffin just offered me her recollection that there was a time going back many years when there was a monthly budget report, full-blown, and it was changed to quarterly. And she thinks perhaps at that time, the disbursement report, the monthly report became something a little bit less complete, so.
I would just suggest, this has been going on for a number of years. While inflation has been relatively low for a long time, 1,500 seems to be a relatively small number compared to the budget for the board's attention, and that we might want to make that only for more significant amounts in terms of looking at things to draw our attention. Something like 10,000 or more. as something that you look at and say, this is interesting that we're spending $10,000 for this particular thing, you know. And you look at this, you know, there's some couple $100,000 checks there, which is something you might want to just look at and say, that's interesting, you know, that we're spending that much money for that particular thing. But $1,500, you know, I mean, if you want to keep it, that's all right, but
How difficult, is the report is, I'm guessing, is fairly easy to generate?
It is.
So it's really a question of how much paper you're using, right, to a degree.
save a tree, you
Yeah.
know.
Mr. Jagosinski?
Yeah, the other thing is if we're going to increase the amount, it might be useful to turn this into a payee report, where we have a report, for example, Bertram, Moses, and Devlin is $4,000 and $8,000. I don't know if there's other bills from them. But, you know, if we were a payee report, then we would see the total spent with that particular vendor. And that might make the threshold, whereas the individual checks may not.
And that would be of more interest, I think, to see the threshold by vendor rather than each individual check that happens to be written. Is that a
Well, although in
difficult
some
thing to do?
cases, well, I mean, in all the cases, each one is an individual item. So while, I don't know, I think for me, I wouldn't want to see red flags raised, for instance, that we're paying $50,000 to this one person when in essence it's, without knowing what it was, in essence it's, you know, it could be, 10 issues of $5,000 each because they provided some service to a student, you know, in each case. So that to me that's useful information to me, to know that this one person is providing
Well,
a lot of services versus, you know, just that we're handing them $50,000.
Sorted and subtotaled by payee.
I don't want to get too cumbersome, but I mean,
well, you know,
I think the format that we do now is fine. It's an easy report to run. It gives you how much we spent on each vendor by function, and it also gives what account it came out of. So I think it's fine to continue this format. If you want to raise the threshold, you know, that's okay with us too.
I personally would like to see it raised maybe to 5,000.
yeah, I was going to say 5,000.
instead of 1,500, make it 5,000 as a threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
Does anybody,
Pick the number.
does anybody have any objection to raising it to $5,000? Mr. DeGrego?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I mean, I'm just looking at this, you know, and I see here on page 24, Arboreta Landscaping Repair Work for Vandalism at Matheson. I want to know, can I ask what was damaged, and was it on our cameras? Did we catch them? Like we did at the other school?
I can give
last
you,
year?
if you would, Mr. DeGrego, just tell me what,
It's like 6 down or 10 down, Arboreta
Which page?
Landscaping. Page 24. It says repair vandalism.
yep, I have it.
On Matheson.
Okay.
One, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 down on page 24.
Yeah, 6,045.
I mean,
I-
how can the light we
I-
caught those kids that broke into that did damage to the school last year because of the cameras?
Generally, we do catch them,
Uh-huh.
and generally, we make them, when the court sends us as the victim, we get a chance to weigh in. And generally, we ask that, we don't object to accelerated rehabilitation or things like that, as long as part of that is community service, and they serve their community service here. And I don't know that that's the particular case at Mathewson.
Okay.
But that's generally what we do, if we catch them, and many times we do.
And what was damaged?
We make them work it off. We make them work it off here in the school.
What was damaged, Mr. Richardson?
I believe, I believe that it was a vehicle that went on the grass and tore up the lawn. But I can get you more particulars on that, on the particular incident and what actually had to be done.
So if we increase the amount from 1,500 and say this was under 5,000, we wouldn't see stuff like this on this report.
Correct.
So I'm against raising it to 5,000. I'd rather still see it at 1,500.
How do we feel, board? I mean, if there's no strong, is there any strong objection to leaving it as it is? Let me ask that. I know some people have indicated they'd like to, it might make more sense to raise it. Again, it's a report that's easy to generate, according to Mr. Riccitelli. It's a report that's been used for, many, many years. And again, it would save some paper, I think, is what it boils down to if we raise the amount. Mrs. Federico?
I'm sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. I think there would be another benefit to raising the amount, in that as board members, we could see more quickly the things that are more substantial. So I'll just offer another suggestion to raise it to 2,500. It's not much, but it would, again, shorten the length of the report and let us focus more on the things that are higher dollars.
Well, I think every dollar counts. I agree with Mrs. DeGrego on keeping it. It's an easy report, and it's nice to see the items even on the lower end, because a bunch of little stuff does add up to a big stuff.
Any other comments? I'm not hearing a big one way or the other, so if nobody has huge objection, we'll just leave it as it is then.
That's fine.
Okay, so what about, are we in agreement to move it off of the consent agenda and move it up to an informational report rather than having us take action on
That I
it?
agree, that's definitely.
Yes? Anybody object to doing that?
Nope.
Okay, then we will make that change for next month. We'll move it up as a informational item only, as part of the superintendent's report, and take it off the consent agenda.
Along with the informational reports, I think an end-of-the-year report with totals by vendor would be of interest. That is, at the end of the year, we spend X dollars by vendors. I'm not sure if there is such a report, but I think it might be of interest to see what is the amount per year we're spending with each individual vendor.
Well, we set our annual, we set the broad budget dollars. For me, I think that's getting
I'm just looking
little
for a report
bit more.
along those lines.
How many vendors? We must have hundreds of vendors.
Oh, we do.
I think that would be a huge report.
It would be, unless we did it strictly total by, one line, this vendor.
One
total
line,
spend.
yeah, what I was looking for is, and only those where the amount exceeds like $10,000 or something. But if you're on an annual basis, you're spending more than $10,000 for a particular vendor. But if you come back, say, next time we meet and say, that's going to be a big report, and, not, I don't want a big piece of paper. I'd rather have something that's
Okay.
highlights those vendors where we're spending a lot of money with those vendors and see who it is and how much we're spending. When it touches a certain amount, then I think it might be of interest to the board, that's all.
For what, I'm not sure I understand the rationale, though, the reasoning. I mean, we, as a board, our responsibility is to set the broad budget dollars, which we do with our annual budget, and then it's up to the discretion of administration to appropriately, use the money. And we hold Dr. Fieser accountable in the end for that being done. They go out to bid when they need to go out to bid, and they make their decisions on vendors based on, what they feel is in the best interest of the district. So I'm not sure that I see really what the reason is, other than to have them give us another report.
Yeah, it's a matter of curiosity and interest.
I agree with Mr. Whiskeyman. I think, that we need more information rather than less. I think, I have no problem with Dr. Fieser. I have enormous confidence in her. But, a board should operate as though we have an average superintendent, not Dr. Fieser, who I think is way above average. And I think that, we really don't have as much oversight as we should have. If you take a look, I've been taking a look at what other boards do, looking at their agendas, looking at their minutes, and, you know, we are probably the least engaged board in the state. It's absolutely
If I
amazing.
could just stop you there for 1 minute, because actually we're getting out of the scope of the original motion, which was the quarterly budget report, and we haven't taken that off of the disbursement report. We haven't rescinded that motion yet. Do you want to rescind that motion? We're not going to vote on this report, so if you could withdraw your motion.
Okay, I withdraw my motion on
And
the
did you withdraw your
disbursement.
second?
I will withdraw my second.
That will be off the table. So, continue.
Yeah, I think that we need to be more engaged. There were other questions I had related to this, which are kind of off of it. Wondering, a budget is one thing, but that typically does not provide an authorization to spend. Typically, you have, some document somewhere that says expenses of this level need to be authorized by this person, expenses of this level need to be authorized by this person. I take it we do have that?
Oh, sure.
Does that include both items that are within budget and over budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Every expenditure has a chain of authorization.
Right.
Yes.
The other
And-
thing.
And they can't, internal transfers can't be done without
Board
getting to a
approval.
higher level.
Right. The other thing is that a lot of these expenditures involve contracts. We never review and approve contracts. On the city side, the Board of Aldermen does do that. What basis does the city side use for reviewing a contract? Do they review all the contracts, or is it a dollar limit, or?
There are certain contracts that go to the Board of Aldermen for approval. Most of the time, and this is just based on my experience and my recollection,
Yeah.
because I've forgotten more than I remember, but many times if it had to do with grant funding, it had to be approved by the board if the Board of Aldermen was going to accept a certain amount of money. But the vast number of contracts never make it to the Board of Aldermen. I mean, you could imagine in a city with a $200 million budget on both sides of the budget, there's contracts every single day. There's no dollar amount threshold that goes to the Board of Aldermen.
So there's not like contract in excess of $1 million has to go to the board?
There is a bidding threshold, and there's certain things that have to be bid that are over $25,000, that's by charter. And then state statute also requires bidding, but not for approval of the contract. Things like, and again, it's coming back to me, but things like purchase of land,
Right.
bringing on, or sale of land, anything like that, always had to be approved. Those were contracts. But general operating and business contracts never went to the Board of Aldermen.
Do we sign multi-year contracts?
In some instances, yes. Like, for instance, just one that comes to mind very quickly is the bus contract. The contract lease for the copiers. Yes, so we do.
It seems to be a problem signing a multi-year contract because really you only have authority to do what is within a single year.
Right. I understand what you're saying, but it's completely impractical.
I understand.
And it would be wholly inefficient, because no bus contractor is going to come in and say, we're going to give you a one-year contract. It just wouldn't be feasible. Same thing with copiers. They may give us a one-year lease, but it would be so expensive that it would be, it would be out of the realm of possibility. So I think there has to be a certain amount of, yes, we have a budget that goes year to year, but at the same time, you have to be able to continue to do business and do it efficiently.
I'm not arguing against multi-year contracts. I'm just wondering whether that's the type of thing that should be approved by the board, because that goes beyond the scope of what you've been given. You've been given a one-year budget. These things go beyond the scope. Now, if there's 10,000 of them, I certainly don't want to see 10,000 of them. But, you know, if there's a reasonable number, it may make sense that we review those things that are multi-year.
Well, transportation, we have brought the contract to you in the past. There's no statutory requirement for us to do that, but because it is so big, and because it's, for so many years, we've traditionally have done that. But I think this is a philosophical discussion. Under policy governance, we don't. You know, you entrust that to the superintendent, who entrusts it to those who are employed in the district to properly apply the laws, properly stay within budget, and to meet all of the financial obligations and audit requirements. So I think it's a really philosophical question, but you know, under the current policy governance, we comply. And the board asks for those things that are appropriate under the policy governance.
I mean, really, our responsibility is to hold the superintendent accountable, and we do that in terms of our monthly leadership meetings with her, our twice a year, you know, check-in, her annual review and her mid-year check-in. I mean, that's the role of the board, and that's the role of any board. I mean, if you take the true meaning of, true, board responsibilities and look at them in their pure form, it's that oversight, that broad oversight. And the day-to-day operations of the school district is left up to the superintendent and her staff. That's uniform. Whether boards follow that or not, that's our philosophy and that's what we follow.
I mean, I've looked, and this is only anecdotal, and I've looked at, and I've looked at boards that are near us, Shelton, Stratford. I think I took a look at Fairfield. I took a look at Southington. I took a look at, ones that we compare ourselves to. And we are radically different than the other boards.
We're one of only a couple of boards in Connecticut that have the policy governance model. But if you really look at the true information that Kate provides us with, for instance, the role of a Board of Education, we're doing what the Board of Ed should be doing. Looking at the big picture, the higher level work, and leaving the day-to-day operations of the school system up to the administration, which is what we pay them to do, what they're trained to do.
I was just going to say, if I may, in terms of the reporting and the reports that we get, personally for me, as a finance person, there's probably a little more, that I'd like to see, or there might be a way that some of the reports could be organized in a way that could be more helpful to us. And I'm wondering if perhaps we could give it some thought and come back to it when we get the final budget book in September. And I say that because when we sit here in January and we're looking at a budget, and you've already put the book together, it's not the time to say, gee, I'd really like to see it this way, or it would help me to see it that way, because the book's already done. But it might be helpful to the board and to Mr. Riccitelli if we did have a little conversation about that in advance. I mean, I know we have a full agenda of topics, but maybe we can have a brief conversation about that on one of our future agendas. Because I feel like tonight, it's kind of difficult to talk about it because I personally haven't really given it much thought as to what I'd like to see. But I'm sure there's some things we could talk about only things that would not be too difficult.
Yeah, there's, like we said before, reporting, there's many, many different ways of reporting. I can tell you, I've looked at other districts' budgets, and the amount of information that's in our budget book is vast compared to some of the other districts that I've seen. That's anecdotal also, it's neither here nor there, but there's a tremendous amount of information that goes into this budget book. So, I think all the numbers are there. If we want the numbers in a different format, we certainly can find a format that, the board is more comfortable with, if you think that you're not comfortable with the present one.
I mean, it really boils down to the consensus of the board, the desire of the board, and how much extra effort we want to put on administration, if there is any extra effort, depending on what the board would like to see. So Are we agreeable to putting this conversation off until sometime in the fall after we get that final book to maybe, I'm not a financial person, so what I'm seeing now is fine for me, but those with more expertise may have some other suggestions. Is that okay?
That's
To move on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's see, where are we at? Where's my agenda? Okay, I think we're at,
Board comment.
just did new business, board, board comment. Is there any board comment? No board comment. Okay, seeing none, a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.